All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us. As I said, this afternoon, East Coast, this morning, West Coast, for this edition of This Week in Review. As always, I will not be alone to talk about some of the happenings or the news bits that have made the rounds within the entertainment world. I'm joined by
Jerome Bourgeois here, co-creator of Movers and Shakers. How's it going, Brandon? How's your
It's
week
going
been?
good, man. It's been good. It's been good. All right, so let's just hit the ground running, man. Just starting off with our first story. Well, first, before we hop into that, just a couple of minutes to discuss. Remember, if you enjoy many of the videos that we do, make sure that you like and subscribe. All of that stuff. Twitter, Move and Shake UNLTD, Instagram, Movers Shakers Unlimited, and of course, for any topics that we discuss on This Week in Review, you can also use the hashtag listed here. So TWNRMNSU. So This Week in Review, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. So without further ado, now that we have that out of the way, let's hop into our first story. So over this week, we had Godzilla and Kong do some terrific business at the box office. However, the other caveat of that is that unlike what would be the normal response to having such an impressive haul at the box office, it also did well simultaneously with its viewage on HBO Max. With that being said, I'll hop into some of the details on it, but just off the initial premise, Jerome, what are your thoughts on this news with this new setup, or I should say, this new model that we've seen with HBO Max and with Warner Brothers?
Yeah, I think it's really impressive and it's amazing because, like, I mean, I feel like this is the beginning of the new distribution model. I mean, for Godzilla versus Kong to make 48.5 million its first 5 days in theaters, and still it did well on HBO Max, which actually costs $15 a month. Even though they don't have the exact numbers, they're not releasing. I don't think they're releasing the exact numbers for Godzilla vs Kong on the streaming service, but I know it did well. It just shows like, hey, people still want to go to the movie theater to watch a movie that they want to see there, and some people just want to stay home. And I mean, what's really going to be the test is this weekend and the next weekend to see if people are still going to go to theaters, or was it just for that first weekend? But also, theaters aren't fully open everywhere, so it's still kind of impressive for like the theaters that are in like New York or LA that are like if they're at 25% about to capacity, about to be 50%, or other markets that are like that. And for them to, for people to still go there, it just shows that some people just want choice, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the exhibition industry, where movie theaters need that longer window, are actually going to lose money or just die. I mean, that's been the big fear, that the shorter the window gets, that less people are going to probably go to theaters because of the exclusivity, where you have to watch it there. But I feel like I said, this is the beginning of something of how this new model is going to play out. But we still got to kind of see with like the next weekend. I mean, this weekend and the subsequent weekends, but also other films too. Because I really feel like, I don't know if this is actually going to apply to like every movie, maybe, because I feel like Godzilla versus Kong, that's a movie. If you
That's
can
an
go to the
event
theaters,
movie.
exactly, yeah.
That's an
And
event movie.
even though I saw it on HBO Max and I loved it, I thought it was the best one in the series, and I feel like we don't even theaters. But I'm not vaccinated yet, so I'm kind of waiting until I get vaccinated before I make that decision to go back to the theaters. But it's it's gonna. I think there's just gonna be a lot of like mixed emotions within the industry for people to scramble to decide like, hey, okay, it's not that bad, but I don't know, what does this mean? Like there's good. It's just weird because it. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. Like I kind of thought like, hey, this might hurt the theatrical model, but you give people a choice, they're gonna make a decision on how they want to see stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes,
We'll
but
definitely
it's
see.
promising.
And I was going to say, just to give some numbers of it, I know I said I was going to go into some figures. So, and again, just like you said, they didn't give exact figures, at least on the HBO end from this story, but over 5 days, the first 5 days that it was in theaters, Godzilla. And you guys remember keeping in mind that we are still within the limitations that we're seeing in a lot of theaters where they're not functioning at 100% capacity. It made nearly $50 million. So I said $48.5 million over its first 5 days. So with all of those like limitations in mind, that's pretty impressive. However, I'll second what you said, Jerome, in that I think that there is an asterisk when it comes to this film because it is very much it's very much an event film, and I have a feeling we may see something like this when it comes to a Marvel movie. But if we're thinking about some, awards bait films, will we see something like this? I'm a little skeptical that we would. But something like Mortal Kombat. I mean, I know I'm a little biased, but I feel like that is a big enough event film, especially with the hiatus that we've had with that IP, which we will get into a little later. But something like that, we might see that, or maybe even with a DCEU film. But with just your every run of the mill feature. I'm a little skeptical that we would see that. As a matter of fact, if we're thinking about some genre, it'll be interesting to see how genres play into this model, because I feel that when we're thinking of certain genres, we might see a trend where certain genres play or are playing better on one platform than the other. So maybe with your horror films, you might see it, spike differently on streaming or on HBO Max for people to be able to watch it at home versus going to a theater to watch the film. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. This is the thing though, because it's true. HBO Max. Now, this is the only issue with this territory we're getting into, because there needs to be more transparency with these streams, because they're not being. HBO's. According to the Variety, HBO Max is saying that this was their number one largest viewed film on HBO Max, and that's great. But you don't hear anything about and they mentioned that back in January when The Little Things came out, that did really well. And I know Wonder Woman 1984 that did well too, but they didn't mention the other films like Judas and the Black Messiah or I think it was, what is it, the Tom and Jerry, or I don't know. I think Tom and Jerry. Yeah, so it's like, how did those other films do? But then also it's like, why? Well, yeah, we need to have how like there's Nielsen ratings for TV, and that's how, even though that's not always, there's
Right.
controversy with how that information is actually portrayed and recorded. Because you're not actually, they're taking a sample size and they have to reach out to people, whatever. That's another conversation. But we need to have some sort of universal transparency, because like even Netflix, they don't release none of these companies are releasing their numbers, so we don't really know. And also, I feel like that's going to have to eventually happen, because it seems like Hollywood's actually a little bit behind the music industry with how this is happening. Because remember, the music industry was way behind when Napster came out and just changed everything. And then they had to adapt to finally the streaming services like with Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever, Tidal, all those. Now I feel like movie theaters and exhibitors, like those business owners, in addition to the filmmakers and the actors and everything, they're going to have to figure out a new type of deal where, they're making money off of the box office, but then also, how many times a movie's maybe streamed, or, how can you prove that, hey, Godzilla versus Kong is the reason why this many people signed up. So how much revenue should they be getting? Like, what's that formula to create how much money you should be getting every time the movie is played? I'm telling you, the agents and lawyers, they're all gonna have a frenzy with this and gonna have to figure something else out, because there's gonna be a big conflict coming if they don't figure this out soon. Because I know that Because just look at Wonder Woman 1982 with. I mean, they had to give, I think, Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot. I know Patty Jenkins, she got at least like 10 million. They got something like that, like some upfront money, because they were getting. I know they had like some back end in the box office grosses, but what were they going to do with COVID? I mean, not that many people going to theaters, so that was a way to like compromise on the streaming side. So if they're not doing that with everyone, or if that's not considered always fair, or maybe for some cases it is, I feel like they're gonna have to figure something out where you're getting some sort of royalty for every time the movie streamed, because I mean, this is where the future is heading. Like if cable, advertising revenue is down for a cable platform, and even for network television, except for like a lot of these live events like Super Bowl, stuff like that. But if everything's heading towards streaming and they're making the revenue from subscribers, there has to be some formula that's going to have to come together to compensate the filmmakers, the actors, the writers,
sure.
producers. And then also, I think like I said, they're really going to have to figure out something, I think, with exhibitors, because if this is the new normal, where HBO, like I said, HBO Max is trying it out this year, where they're releasing in theaters and on HBO Max simultaneously, they're going to have to get a cut of that. I know Universal made a deal with theaters where, like, if a movie makes a certain amount of money after a few weeks, then if it doesn't make a certain amount of money, then they can release it to the streaming service sooner. But if not, then it has to stay in theaters. So that's some sort of compromise. And I remember even Sean Parker, the co-creator, he created Napster. He was integral to co-founding, helping out with Facebook when it started, and also I think Spotify. He also had something called Screening Room, where he was doing something similar. That hasn't taken off again. Like, it kind of fell through. They changed it to Screening, I think SR Labs now. But I'm wondering if that's going to come back too, because they were trying to do a deal where you pay like, I think $35 or $50, something like that, and to see a movie that would have been theatrically released, that you would see in theaters, but you could also see it at home, and the theaters got a cut of that revenue. So it almost feels like these streaming services are cutting that out. Like, they're kind of using that model a little bit, sort of. We'll see. And I don't know how that's going to work for that idea, but I feel like this is where it's going to go. And I don't care what Disney's trying to do. Like, they're saying they're going to release Black Widow the same way, but they're still going to charge people $30. So I feel like that's going to eventually have to go away and go towards the HBO Max model, where, because you're not penalizing people already paying money for this content and charging them again to see something, when HBO Max isn't doing that. They're just like, hey, you subscribe, you get to see the new movies. So it's definitely a new area. It's going to be interesting how this turns. I think the unions, it's going to be the combination of the unions, the agents, and there's going to be a clash eventually with negotiators.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the thing that I find interesting is, we have kind of this experimental model, so to speak, for 2021. And if I remember correctly, I'll look through the article that was put in by Variety, but it was specified. It gave an interesting tidbit about, this is just an experiment. This isn't something that's going to continue unless, never say never. It could be something that they might play with now based on what they're seeing. But for all intents and purposes, this was a one-off for 2021. And for 2022, there's going to be an exclusivity that they're going to have for that theatrical run before it gets to any other platform.
Are you talking about for HBO Max, you're saying, or for?
Yeah, for this model that they're doing.
But they could change their mind. Like, they didn't warn any of the filmmakers when they made this decision. So I'll believe it when I see it. But I like I said, when it comes to competition and what the market's saying, they could change on a dime. I mean, it's. I feel like I said, this is really going to change the game.
It was here in this article. So let me see if I can share this, and I'll highlight it so that way we can see it. But yeah, it talks about what they're going to be doing from 2021 to 2022 in this story.
45-day window of theatrical exclusivity. I see that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they could still change that.
Yeah, they can still change it, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how that turns out. As I said, I think we both agree that based on the type of film, that we're talking about, that it's not going to have, it may not play out the same exact way that we're seeing with Godzilla and Kong. There's definitely a asterisk that needs to be placed on that based on the circumstances. A lot of people, I think it's just a combination of it's just a zeitgeist of a bunch of circumstances that helped the film do well. Like, don't get me wrong, if we were just in, everything was back to normal, I still feel that it would have done, solid business. However, we have to remember that now that people are being vaccinated, people are more anxious than ever to get back to the way things are. So there's going to be more of a fever pitch of being able to go to a movie theater and experience, that communal atmosphere of being at a movie theater. So, you have that element, you have the element of this, these two iconic kaiju or monsters, going head to head. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, you have that at play, and then also just the like I said, I think it's just those two things, just the anticipation and the enthusiasm to get things back to normal, and to be able to experience a film like this on the big screen versus in your home. Because let's be honest, like something this, when you have these two giant monsters, you want to see it on the largest screen you can, and not on not at home, and be able to experience like everything, the interaction of the audience with the film, and even like the sound quality. I don't care, how great your sound quality is or how much you spend on it. There's just something about, being in having that theatrical experience for sure. All right, so switching gears, Jerome, I'll let you take the lead on this one. We did have a story regarding, I guess you can call it like a Shark Tank-esque show called NFTs, The Pitch. So go ahead, Jerome. I will hop it over to you.
Yeah, so basically I thought this was interesting. So it's Guy Oseary, Ashton Kutcher. They teamed up to invest in this NFT game. Into this NFT pitch like Shark Tank type of spinoff show. They invested $1 million in this, and they're teamed up also with Mark Cuban and Snoop Dogg. And basically, it's kind of like Shark Tank, but for people who have ideas with NFTs. So basically, NFT is like a non-fungible token, which it pretty much allows you to like just think of it as like a digital way to like digital arts, and it's a way to authenticate it by using the blockchain technology, like with cryptocurrency. So I just thought this was interesting because I like how they're having, it's like a spin-off show on this, and it's giving people opportunities. I mean, basically, you could submit for it up until April 12th. I mean, I know the window's kind of short, and then they have 30 finalists who are going to be notified about it, and they're going to have their virtual pitch session with the judges. And this is big because this is something that a lot of people are getting into, a lot of artists or whatever. And what's good about NFTs, just
and I'm going to highlight that part. I know you were talking about that contest between the 5th and the 12th, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the good thing about NFTs is like what's innovative about it is that the potential for, like, if you're an artist or you're someone who creates this digital art, when you sell it to somebody, and then that person sells it to someone else, you still get a cut from every time it's resold. So that's why it's groundbreaking. It's going to help artists, creators, anyone like that. And it's also helping, something that might not be as valuable now might be valuable in the future. And you could get in early, on that end. So, I mean, like I said, this space is still growing. It's been around for a couple of years, but now a lot of celebrities are getting involved and artists. So I thought it's cool that like now they're going to make a show about it. And I love Shark Tank. I'm a big Shark Tank fan. So I think it's great how they're having like a spinoff and they're giving people opportunities. And anything, Mark Cuban or Ashton Kutcher, like, they're really big in just the tech space, investing in other entrepreneurs. I just thought it was kind of interesting that they're doing this. Like anytime they're giving opportunities to people, I think it's always cool to try to highlight it. So anyone who has an idea, you might as well, submit. Don't have that much time, but if it does well, I'm sure they'll be back. So.
For sure. So I guess the one takeaway, at least for me, that I find is awesome about this story is we live in a day and age where it's so easy to where there's an opportunity where a lot of folks will use content, and you want to make sure that your efforts are protected. So it's very cool that it has that element of I guess you can say exclusivity, where it can protect against infringement, it can protect against piracy and all those things that that play a hand in preventing artists from being able to get the revenue streams that they deserve for the efforts that they have to put out their content, their music, what have you, whatever it may be. So anything that will help towards that and encourages that, I'm all for. So now, with that being said, next story that we want to talk about is, an unfortunate one. This past week, we did have a passing of, the iconic music artist known as DMX. Passes away at 50. While I pull up the story, Jerome, just initial thoughts on just like that shocking news of hearing of his passing.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a sad one. I mean, I grew up on DMX. I mean, I remember I was at this. It's funny. I was at this like leadership camp, like one of my